the Rangers Journal now.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you're watching this. My name is Doug. This is the Rangers Journal, and you're watching the Journal Report. Journal Report is our show where we take some time to look around the world at various players that we think could do a job potentially for Rangers, reflecting the needs of the team as and when, and where we are in the state of our squad building, which is obviously heavily still ongoing at the moment with just, I think, the 2 weeks now left of the transfer window. We got breaking news today that Robbie Fraser has joined Dunfermline on a permanent deal, bringing us down to 2 left backs. Jeff Day is pretty much 1 foot out of the door, which will leave us with 1 left back who spends most of his time left back on the treatment table. So this is coming at a very timely point, I think, Mitch, as we're going to be looking at left backs today.
We are indeed, Doug. As you say, it's a situation that's went from we looked okay a couple of weeks ago to, yep, let's get some bodies in the door. And as you say, our team here at the Journal here, we've had a wee good look round the globe and went, here's 3 of our hot picks for the position.
Absolutely. Our Scoutmaster Gordon has been hard at work putting together these slides and information, so a big shout out to him before we kick off. So all this info, the slides and the details and everything that's packed in there, including now some video snippets that we'll get to look at as well. Have all been put together by him, so thank you very much, Gordon, for all your work in that respect. So without further ado, we'll bring up our first player. So player number 1 is Lucas Esquivel, I think. I'm going to go with that anyway. He's a 23-year-old Argentinian, plays for Club Atlético Paranaense. I've got some basic details there before we go into some more specifics, but 6-footer, so good for set pieces and hopefully heading. Also beneficial potentially from an attacking point of view as well. Not too many more years in his contract, and if we were to go in to purchase him for a fee, and his transfer market value currently sitting around about 3 million. Obviously, those figures can vary as to how realistic they end up being in life, but gives us a rough indication of the kind of market space he may be operating in. Mitch, obviously, we've got his Wheeler stats going on here. These are all data points per 90 versus players in similar positions across the same league. Couple of standouts for myself: passing in the final third, progressive passes, his long passes, crosses, and assists all seem to be pretty high. So looks like someone who is an attacking fullback and someone that can move the ball upfield primarily by moving the ball itself rather than necessarily him and the ball together. What's your kind of initial thoughts looking at the old wheel there?
Yeah, I like a lot of his stats there as well. It shows quite an aggressive left back there that likes to get forward, and the heat map that we've got there as well shows he's one that really likes to hug the touchline there as well. He's a proper wide man's left back, as I would call it. He knows his job. His job is to man his line. And I think having a really good quality range of passes between his assists, his cross numbers, his long passes, and those progressive plays, I think, that really shows you that that's a player that knows his job. And also when you move on his aerial duels, his aerial and his actual defensive roles, I think he probably sits quite nicely as one of those modern day recovery left backs. If he gets himself into a spot, he can get himself out of a spot. And that shows obviously with an average of just under 8 recoveries per 90, and over 4 interceptions over the course of a 90 as well. Looking at those stats there, Doug, and his key strengths across, up in that top right hand side there. Of those key strengths, how do you see them playing into Russell Martin's style of play, but in the way that we're currently set up at the moment?
Well, funnily enough, with you pointing out the recoveries, I think it's interesting to note, a good quarter of those recoveries, or just over, are happening in the opposition half. So that would suggest that he's a player who can press. That's maybe a number we would see pushed up higher a little bit. The pace and athleticism is going to be important. He's a player who seems like he's got a lot of quality in his passing range, so that's something that would fit into Martin's team. Who I think a lot of people sort of think that the Martin system is just short passes, but there can be more to it than that, because the primary point of his passing system is to find a spare man and to find that extra man to progress the ball forward. So if he's good at finding people with those passes, which looks like he's relatively good at, 77% accuracy for his general passes, forward passes just under 70% success rate for them. 96% backwards passes. I'm sure some Rangers fans will cringe at that, but at the end of the day, part of the philosophy is that it's better to keep the ball and go backwards than to lose the ball with something dangerous. So there needs to be a bit of balance within that. We need to see players that are willing to take some risks, particularly when you're up against those blocks. So I think that's an interesting part. On his you pointed at his heat map, I did notice the heat map does kind of tail away as it gets towards kind of halfway through the opponent's half towards that. So it looks like he maybe crosses from deep more frequently than he does at the byline, which would make him kind of similar in a way to Barisic. I think that could be beneficial again if we've got late runners from the box, which we look like we'll get from Lyle
Cameron.
and I'm hoping that that's something we're going to see from Asgard as well. So yeah, it definitely looks like he could fit into that. And what we'll have a wee look at then for so hopefully the technology will click in nicely here. As I say, we've got some videos here of his crossing, so just kind of nip through those and then we'll get your thoughts on those once they've got through them. So this is our first little example here. So we've got a deep run, pushing into the box, and then just finding the man, gets a shot away.
And it does. I think that particular clip there shows the benefits of having a really aggressive fullback that can pass the ball properly, but he's not afraid. He's very assured with the ball at his feet. He's confident in his own ability, and it shows you that whipped range of passes as well. Okay, the shot never came off for his striker, but he's put the hard yards in there for his striker to remain in the 6-yard box and say, I will be where you expect a striker to be. And I think having mobile, physical, and again, he's a big unit at 6 foot, having somebody that's a big physical unit like that with, good ball control, it's something that maybe that bit of raw athleticism that we've maybe lacked in the area, and that's through no fault of Ridvan or no fault of Yefty. I think, when you look at, Esgaval's overall build, he's a bit more muscular than Yefty because he's a bit older than him as well, which probably gives him that better edge in the in the physical duels there as well to ride a tackle.
Yep. It's obviously passing to his version of Dessers in that clip.
I see Dessers buries that, mate.
So got another cross from wide there. So if we get on to the next clip. So this one sees him getting the ball quite deep and whipping one into the centre box. They do score from that one. That one's a little bit more sort of Tavernier-esque. That one's kind of coming from deep and curving in towards the attacker. And then our next one. So that's a very Barisic cross. That one kind of forward, quite close to the line, and then just kind of whipping it right into the danger zone. So he does remind me a lot. I mean, Gordon's mentioned him on the slide here. He does seem to have a lot of strengths that we've missed since kind of Barisic's heyday. Barisic was a strong player, and as I say, obviously, and it had an excellent whip of the ball. So that's something that we've lacked a bit since he's left. It did look like Yilmaz might have been able to replicate it to a degree but obviously his body's just let him down. He's never been able to play for any longer than kind of 5 minutes at a time. Yep. And then I've been critical of Jeffy's output before. He just doesn't seem to have particularly strong crossing ability there.
I think what's maybe interesting though is, as we've mentioned, obviously, that Esquivel is obviously a couple of years older than Jeffy, but also plays in a South American league where Jeffy's gone back to. And I think this is maybe where it's quite important, maybe as part of Jeffy's next stage of his development, to go and maybe get used to that free-flowing attacking football as a fullback, where he can work on that end product that we all know he can run. We all know he can beat a man. But as you say, that I think one of the things that we're all quite critical of him is his decision making and on the pitch, and his overall cross quality output as opposed to the cross volume output. I think what we would probably have here with Esquivel is a player that is just finished his apprenticeship versus a player who's currently starting their apprenticeship right now. They're on their second year apprenticeship, whereas he's finished his 4 years.
Right, so we've got a couple more examples there of his sort of dribbling and link-up play. Gordon's pointing out takes out a few players with a pass here. On this first example, the ball coming back to him. A nice little flick there. Receives the ball again. Drives past two. And then receives the ball right on the touchline. So he does get to the byline at times. And that ball goes a bit errantly. But I think good bit of play there. A bit of interchange between his teammates. We've got this example then. He's gathering the ball. Again, drives past his marker. Gets a really tasty ball in there. There's a
really nice aggressive running as well.
Yep. Not afraid to take on a player, which is something I like to see. And then we've got this one. Receiving the ball out wide again. Nice little interchange between his partner. Bursts past two, then bursts past the third. Doesn't quite get the cross in that time.
I think what's interesting with that clip there as well is you see Esquivel and two of his teammates sitting in one of the triangles. We all know under Russell Martin's tactics, players tend to move in pods of three, and you can see that's a player that's already playing in a system like that right now, who could then potentially quite easily transition into a similar setup here, but just obviously arguably a higher quality league.
Absolutely. We've got another big clip here. So this one we can see him making a bursting run from his own half. Again, driving past the player, looks strong, quite quick, and then gets the ball into his striker, who gets a nice little goal in the bottom corner per goalkeeping in that up as well. And then our last little bit here we've got is about his defensive duels. So Gordon's picked out this is a strong part of his game. 61% of his defensive duels, along with 63% aerial duels, showing good body positioning, dictating where the attackers go, and very aggressive and not willing to give attackers time to turn when they receive the ball. We can see the kind of spaces that he's been getting these in his last few games. So obviously you can see in that sort of left-hand side, a lot of obviously duels going on in that corner area where attackers are looking to get crosses in. That is something that both our fullbacks have been criticised for, letting crosses in too easily. So I think that's a good thing to see. But then again, you can kind of see in all three. Again, you've got a handful of those occurring further up the pitch as well, which I think is a benefit and good for the Martin system, where we're going to press teams. If we're going to press teams that we have fullbacks and just players in general that can win the ball further up the pitch.
And as you say, it shows that aggressive nature that he's got there as well, in both his own area and in that opposition area. If you're in my area, I'm not letting you whip a ball past me too easily, and I think that's something it's maybe a level of physicality and a level of aggression that we've not had in the back line for a little while.
Okay, so we've got some clips of his defensive duels, so I'll just quickly flip through those. You can see some of them. So winning the ball. So you see the ball coming forward into the fullback area, and then wins that one. Good footing in. This team comes away with the ball. And then we've got this one. So opposition keeper launches it into the attacking space this time, and again he's up there. He not only wins the ball, prevents it from going out, and then back in position as the ball moves off into the other areas of the pitch. It's like, again, something else some of our fullbacks have been criticised of at times, not getting back into position at the right times. We've got this one here, ball out to the fullback, plays the ball in, and then he gets that foot in just in front of the attacker for the ball to go out. And we're finishing here with his passing. So just some graphics to go along with those passing stats that we touched on a bit earlier. So we can see a lot of forward passes, moving the ball across the pitch as into the box with his crosses, passing into the final third. Again, kind of a lot you can see here. I think this shows with the direction of these. That suggests to me an interchange and interplay with his winger. And then you've got a bit more of a mix. Again, a nice cross ball from halfway line kind of to the really far post.
The box.
So he's got a lot. He's got a lot of different options, a lot of different types of passes there. And I think, as I say, it shows him not only setting up goals but interchanging with his winger. His backward passes, I think those are largely kind of goalkeeper / centre back type ones, so just the kind of the usual ones that you probably see when the ball's moving about. Any kind of thoughts on that?
I like the range of forward passes in particular because it shows there's variety in the play as well. There's a little bit of coming a bit longer, a little bit shorter, but also you can see where, in that middle graphic in particular, you can see where everything's done with intention. I think that middle graphic just shows that wee bit clearer. As well as even the final graphic when you look at his forward passes of everything's done in that, if you want to call it that, diamond area of the pitch of the byline and that inside third of the pitch is his. And it shows you just, again, how he commands that space. But again, even looking at his passing in general, you can see he's got a good quality range of passes in there as well. That when he sends that ball off his foot, he knows where he's sending it and why he's sending it, which I think is something that's highly underrated, especially, in the way that football's going today.
Absolutely. So that wraps us up there for Lucas. So I'll attempt to say the name again. Esquivel, I think it is, the Argentinian. So we're going to be moving on to our next player now. So our next player that we've got up here is Roy Revivo. I think, again, apologies for my potential mauling of his name. 22-year-old Israeli playing for Maccabi Tel Aviv. Again, we've got his heat map there, a little bit more aggressive heat map, slightly redder colours and slightly more advanced than we saw previously. Some of the highlights in his wheel there, much accurate progressive passes, assists, dribbles and crosses, key passes, and second assists as well. I noticed some of his higher ones in that one.
Yeah, I also really like his assists and, as you say, those secondary assist numbers as well. But when you kind of tally that up with the heat map, you can clearly see he's a left back that likes to maybe play that little bit further forward to support the midfield, and maybe support, obviously, as a kind of almost like a secondary winger on that left-hand side as well. Good, strong, accurate crosses, but just something I think, particularly down the left, is something that we've maybe been very, very missing of over the last couple of years. And I think, you should say as well, looking at it, progressive runs are really good, aerial duels Again, another 6-footer as well, as we all know. Kevin Thelwell
Mm-hmm.
seems to have a thing for big giant players, so a 6-footer at the back's not a problem.
A handy trait for our league, I would say. So not a bad one for him to have. So we've got a couple of the key strengths and more specific stats in here. So again, some good highlights in the passing. 2 goals and 5 assists in his last 24 matches, which is a reasonable number. Again, something I would like to see pushed a little if it came to us, but I think that would be an excellent start. What stands out here for you?
I think one of the big things that stands out for myself is his defensive duels work. One, because if you looked at his heat map, you would assume that he has just the quintessential, almost aggressive up front left back, but actually he's doing a lot more groundwork there for the defence than you think. And I think as well those, even when you look at his overall duel percentages, 17 duels as an average per 90 minutes. That's a lot of duels. He's a busy old left back, which suggests that from a fitness aspect, again, he's got to have, pardon the expression, but he's got to have a few revs in the engine there. He's got to have a few revs in that engine there, and again, really good link-up play there as well with that quality ranges of passes.
Absolutely. I think looking at the key strengths, immediately comes out to me that he's comfortable coming inside or outside of the park, which I think is something that would fit in with Martin's system in terms of inversion. The way he wants fullbacks doing that. The link-up play would also be really important with the way that he's seems to encourage his fullbacks to get into the midfield areas and be a part of build-up play. So some good key points there. So again, we've got some videos that we'll power through with him. So again, we've got some crossing attributes. Love that cross, so first time volley cross in, does go to the goalkeeper, but shows that again he likes to try something. And anyone that watched the Hibs game the other night, I think, will know that sometimes just giving something a go will give you the spectacular. Nice cross into the centre of the box there, resulting in a goal from a header.
Nice tidy.
Yep, and then. Am I getting this one coming? There we go. And then winning the ball just inside the opposing half, and again driving forward past his man and getting
Good
a nice
strength there
ball
as
in.
well. I will say some poor defending from the opposition there as well, but again, really nice and strong as well, on the ball.
Absolutely. We've got some stuff on his ball carrying as well. So you can see here, defender on the ball, moves into midfield. Ball then comes out into the wide area. And we see him driving forward into the space that's been left as the defender is caught marking between blocking him and marking the winger, and then a nice hit from his striker, or might not be a striker, but from his fellow player anyway. Ball comes across to him in space. You've got the defence who were in a nice flat line there. Again, defender's caught between him and his winger. He gets himself inside, nicely gets past two, and then ends up getting a shot. He was pushed slightly wide by the defender, good defending there, but again, it's good seeing someone driving at the play. Then in this example, got a ball out from the opposition goalkeeper. Got and from their goalkeeper. They're away shot this time. And he's coming through, crossing right into the striker, and it's unfortunate. Good save from the goalkeeper there.
I'll also say as well, the clips show that the raw pace that he's got there as well, but how quickly he shifts himself up and down the park there as well. And I think that's something that, with the style of play that Russell Martin's got in mind for this team, it relies on being big, strong, pacey, athletic. Something that realistically, as a team, we've not seen from our team for probably a good 2 or 3 seasons now. Just some big, strong, raw athletes, and I would say somebody that's maybe in a defensive mould cut similar to John Lundstram in that respect of big, strong, physical presence, box-to-box type player. And you can be a box-to-box left-back in today's world there, because if you play just that further up the pitch like he does, and it obviously snugs into the byline, you're almost inadvertently, when you're on the ball playing as that, in this case, a fourth or a fifth midfielder. It allows you to almost be a bit more proactive that way.
Yeah, I think it's on that last clip there, the burst of pace, and you touched on there. Is the player in front of him gets the ball, and he really drove past and wide him to get into that position to receive the ball and put the cross in for the goal. We've got some of his passing across the sort of different kind of metrics here as well. Again, even more so than last time, I think when you look at sort of all his passes together, they are, he's got a real variety of passing in the different areas of the pitch. Again, you've got a couple of big switches across there, which I like to see. His long passes mostly successful. Going in there, I would maybe have liked to see a little bit more from his crossing. That's something we would probably get him to work on if he came to Rangers. But anything from this that's strikes out to you?
Yeah, as you say, I think as well, what people need to remember as well when they're watching us presenting players like this as well is the players that we find are not going to be perfect, because if they were perfect, we couldn't afford them. So every player that we find has room to grow. And as you say, they're within a kind of relatively sensible budget as well. He's roughly, about a £3 million transfer market, roughly.
Right there, yeah.
Even if he came here at 23, 24 years old, he picks up some of that fine tuning on the motor. Even if in a couple of years' time he went for £7 million, for example, might not be huge sums of money in today's world of football, but that is a 2 and a bit rise on his value that he came here on.
Big money for us, though. So in context, so he's sitting at 2.5 on transfer market, so he's ever so slightly cheaper. So if you got him in for 3.5, 4, and sold him for 7, 8, then again, it's a good earner. Again, those are the types of transfers I want to see more of. We're only going to get the big ones every couple of years, when you're hitting your 15s and 20s, but in between that, year on year, we should be trying to get the ones that make us a couple of million, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 million profit. So your Sakalas and players like that, Jeff Day, as it looks like it's going to be, he's, as much as there's been criticism of Jeff Day to come in, play a full season as much as he did in a year where we got to a quarterfinal of European Cup, and then to, after that 12 months get sold for 10 times the profit. That's as perfect a transfer model function as you could get, really.
And not to forget as well, if the rumours are true, that there's a sell-on in there as well. If he goes back to Brazil, does really, really well, and another European team pick up on him, like
Chelsea pick him again.
Exactly, Strasbourg or somebody within that blue group. It would be relatively easy, for us to get another payday off the back of that as well. We've seen it with players like Santos, obviously moving to Chelsea, from Brazil for, he went for about £20 million or something. The big teams and the big leagues are watching what's going on in South America, because they know that they know the quality of the players and they know the quality of what's going on there. It might not even be an English team that come in for him. It could very well be a Spanish team that come in for him.
Yep.
So you never know. We might even get paid again, Doug.
Absolutely, and I mean, South American players generally want to come to Europe as well. It's one of the things that sometimes Brazilians criticise about their national team, is that there are not enough players that are playing within Brazil, and they want to see a bit more of that. But that's something I think we could leverage more. Get players like Jeff Day in, who are, they're maybe not the top cream of the crop, but they're that rung below that we can bring in, develop a little bit, and then sell on somewhere, and like you say, maybe get those bonuses of sell-ons, where do no work and get paid, which is the best kind. So our last guy we're going to look at today is Toral Bayramov. So he is a 24-year-old Azerbaijani playing for Karabakh, who viewers may recognise from appearing in Champions League fairly regularly. Again, we've got his sort of heat map there. We've got a slightly less intense heat map. So he spends less time in sort of the specific areas, but again, kind of up and down the pitch. He looks like he's a bit more of a byline runner. His heat map does sort of run all the way up to the byline there. A little bit of touch on the opposite side there, so I don't know, maybe he's played some games recently on the opposing side, which could be benefit if he's got that flexibility in him. And again, looking at his data points here, we've got progressive passes, key passes, passes in general, crosses, assists, interceptions, and aerial duels. That's the sort of the high numbers in there. What's standing out for yourself?
I like the interceptions and aerial duels one. I think the aerial duels one, again, given the league that we play in, it's a big character trait that needs to be looked at, of someone that will go up, jump like a fish out of water, and stick their head on it. Sometimes that is, we know that SPFL league level defending sometimes doesn't need to be sexy, it doesn't need to be flashy. Sometimes it's just functional defending. And I think that's where, when you look at a player like, Byramov here, that's only 1.5 million, again, based on, data that's available. When you have a player like that, it's a fairly low risk transfer. And again, it's that we're taking a player from no disrespect to Karabag, but in a league that is a rung below our league, I would say. And they probably play at levels of competition just a little bit below what we do. The player then gets a chance to come here to a slightly better league with more eyes and more exposure and get their stock up. And then when you look at that rolling revolving door and transfers about another £5 million player or a £6 million or a £4 million player in 18 months' time, you can see quite quickly how somebody like him, with those dual stats, the aerial duels, the interceptions, the assist numbers as well for a left back, and he's so offensively minded. I think you could see how quickly he could become a fan's favourite and also become another club's transfer target quite quickly.
Absolutely, yeah. I think some of the key strengths that stand out: set pieces, cover good for all three. Which set pieces is something we've struggled with over the years. He's very offensive minded, as you've mentioned there. His forward passing and the versatility, which, as I say, may play into that little bit of heat map we saw on the opposite side. 5 goals and 5 assists in his last 33 matches, which I think is a good sort of a good level. If that's something he can sustain year to year, I'd be quite happy with that. That's a kind of area I'd like my fullbacks to be in, that sort of around about that 10. If they can do better than that, then that's even better. But certainly I like them sitting in that kind of area. So let's have a wee look at the videos we've got set for him. We've got a nice sunny one here.
You can see why Andy Halliday enjoys his time out in Azerbaijan if that's the weather.
Indeed. So a nice little cross into the back, into the middle there. Header just wide. So we're going to switch to him from the sort of midfielder. Gets it, takes it down, immediately puts it in. That was something I quite liked about Jeffrey when he first arrived. He seemed to put the ball in quite quickly. Barisic tended to sort of take his time and really. Well, no, I think he took his time and picked the spot, which was probably played into why he was so accurate a lot of the time. But I did quite like the sort of that just little extra bit of speed that doesn't give defenders time to settle into position. But I don't. For some reason, he just he seemed to stop doing it as time went on. But that's another story. So we've got the ball coming out. He gets a little shot, gets back in the ball. We get to see a bit of his driving. I think he turned really nicely to get that ball in there and gets a good header in for the goal.
Yeah, really good body movement.
You can see him here. He's really hugging that line, gets the ball into space, immediately knocks it in front of himself. He's got the whole pitch in front of him. He goes all the way, and then a nice little cut back, just as cut out by the defender. Again, I saw Jeffrey doing that, similar things at the beginning of his Rangers career. There's a game in particular where him and Danilo tied up and were making chances like that repeatedly. But again, it seemed to be something that Clement kind of bred out of him, unfortunately. So this ball comes in, comes back to him. He drives forward, past 1, 2, 3, past 4, and then dinks it in. That's a really, really good piece of play there. And that in particular, I think, is something that would be incredibly useful against, deep lying teams and backs the four. If he can break those lines himself and get in and create little chances like that, then that would be, as I say, something I think would be of great benefit to the team. Ball comes sprayed out wide here. It beats his man, and then he's got the strength to kind of keep the ball, knock it back again. Looks like one of these guys that's really good at getting to the line, getting cut back, something that Ryan Kent was very good at, sort of as a winger.
It reminds me of the sort of fullback that you just wouldn't want to play against because he's a menace. He's everywhere you don't want him to be, and you can't. But on the surface levels, you can't stop him from being in the places that you don't want him to be in.
Yep. Again, right up to the byline there, crossing. I feel like that. And again, not that we want to talk about them very often, but this is something that Celtic are very good at, driving to the byline and cutting the ball back and getting goals that way. Because again, you're pulling players out of position as they get worried that the defender or winger, if it's the winger, is getting closer to goal, so players naturally start to move out there. That frees up the space in the box, which gives your attackers more license to find space. And then if you get that cut back just right, you've got a good shot on goal. So again, something I'd like to see a bit more of. So our final slide then for tonight's video is his passing. So again, you can see passing from both sides of the pitch in these particular games. So again, this kind of hints to the versatility mentioned there, that you can potentially play on both sides, which
having two good feet.
Indeed. So obviously, definitely a bonus, particularly if we were to excuse me, if we were to bring him in, for example, given our potential lack of options at fullback, which are, as I say, dwindling by the minute as we go. But what's your thoughts on the pictures here?
I think, as you say, having a fullback that can play either side with two strong feet, it's something that's relatively unheard of like in the modern game. Of you now tend to have a left back as a left back and a right back as a right back. It's not very often that you have, unless you're at the elite level, you don't have too many players that can play on the opposite side quite so comfortably. And I think, as you say, being able to use them almost like that jack in a box. If you're playing against a low block there, if you look at Dundee at the weekend, there is a perfect example. When they were playing with, at one point, 8 men behind the ball. If you've got a player that can switch and a link of, if it's not working for Tav or Aaron's down one side, you can say, well, I tell you what, Tag, you're in, go and you have a crack at it. Or you can mix it up with better variation on the play with, if you want to talk the inverted fullbacks coming in, there's nothing to stop, basically, say Aaron's or Tav switching the ball out to them in the midfield almost, letting them have a free run at the other wing.
Absolutely. One of the things that stands out for me and his forward passes here are very direct. These lines are practically at points just totally what's the word? Not concentric. That's for a circle. Parallel. That's what I'm looking for. A lot of these lines are practically parallel with the touch line. So nice direct passes to the winger, presumably ahead of him. So I think again, nice to see someone that has direct passing, because again, we've suffered the horseshoe a few times from different managers over the years, and Martin can be a little bit like that. He prefers to keep the ball sometimes than take the riskier pass. And I would like to see a couple of players that do have that confidence to stand in front of 50,000 fans at Ibrox and be like, no, I'll take the dangerous pass and try and break the line. And I'll take the booze if it comes off, but still try it again 2 minutes later if I see a good opportunity, because I think that's something that we need more of and are lacking a bit of, players that will take that chance and push that edge.
Exactly, and I think, as you say, just when you watch it as well, when you watch his overall pass movement there as well, on the graphs, everything's with purpose and it's mostly forward. There's not a whole lot up. I get that there will be times where you could imagine there will be times where a player like him would have you pulling your hair out, where you're like, maybe not always so risky, but again, that's something that can be coached to say, there's a time to show and a time to go. And sometimes sometimes players need to be taught themselves of, look, this is fine for the league that you're in right now, but if you want your career to come up here, you just need to maybe do a little bit less of this in this particular moment and a bit more of this in those moments. And again, I think all three players that we've looked at tonight all have good resale value for ourselves if we brought them, and again, it's always on the provision that they hit the developmental milestones that we would like them. It's not that they're toddlers, but they hit those developmental milestones that we would like them to hit. And I think, as you say, those transactional player trading model trades that work in terms of buy in relatively low and they move on for a modest fee in today's world of £4 or £5 million, but that £4 or £5 million is £2 or £3 million in profit. That suddenly becomes a very good transfer and something that Kevin Thelwell in particular did really well at Everton with. Where we all know the mess that Everton were in when he went to Everton. They had all sorts of financial fair play problems, and that's a whole story for another podcast for somebody else from a different club. But the work that he done to wave, Harry Potter's wand essentially, to take them from being so dangerously in the red to so healthily in the black, it can't be underestimated, and I think, and it was built on the back of those quick win players like that.
Absolutely. So if I was to put you on the spot for the end of the video, out of the three, you can only buy one. Who are you going to go for?
Esquivel.
Okay.
What about yourself?
I'm slightly torn between Revivo and Baramov, to be honest. I like that Baramov is slightly older. I feel like he would be a bit more of a, he'd come in a bit more of a complete player, ready to hit the ground running and just be a decent player, and would potentially, rather than maybe be sold on, might be more of a Barisic and actually stay, 4 or 5 years. But I quite liked I feel like the Vivo was a kind of nice balance between the other two. I think the other two had some really good strengths, and I feel like he was quite a good balance in between. And I quite liked his running as well. But all three are good purchases. But I'll go with I'll go with the Azerbaijani. As I say, I think he comes in just a little bit older, that little bit more experience, a little bit more flexible as well. And I like to look at him, so I'll go for him. So I think that we've spent a good bit of time on those three. Is there any final points you want to make before we finish off, Mitch?
Yeah, so this is, I know that there is a lovely section of our audience that love the journal report videos that we do, and previously when it was under the Coppin report. This video is probably a little bit longer than what you're used to from us, and it's not something that you're going to have too much going forward. We've got some new toys to play with, and we're just figuring out a couple of formats that work for us. And with the patience of you, obviously, any feedback that you leave in the comments, we'll also be able to see a little bit more about what you do want to see and a little bit less about what you don't want to see as well. So yeah, also keep your eyes peeled, because we will be rather busy over in Journal Corner with not just your day-to-day pods that you get from ourselves, but with many, many other treats up our sleeve with other players to see you.
There you go, folks. Mitch is your Santa and summer. So bring in all the treats. So that just remains for me to say thank you to Mitch for joining me this evening, and thank you to everyone who is watching this video, who's gotten all the way to the end. I hope you've enjoyed what you've seen. Like Mitch says, we've got lots more stuff planned coming this season. We're really looking to expand things this year with the new season. So not only do we have an exciting new Rangers, but you'll get an exciting new Rangers journal as well. So do keep tuning in. If you have liked it, then click the subscribe button just underneath the video. And if you click the wee bell notification, you can mark to get notified whenever we put up a video or indeed go live. We go live almost 7 nights a week at this point, but definitely 5. And as I say, as mentioned, there are little surprises now and again also, so do hit that button. And yeah, that's arranged for me to say thank you. You've been watching the Rangers Journal. This has been the Journal Report. My name's been Doug, and remember that every night is a Rangers Journal night.